This episode of The Profit Express is brought to you by Corbett Public Relations, promoting and protecting businesses and brands for over 30 years. So please visit my good friends at CorbettPR.com. That's CORBETTPR.com. Well, hello and welcome to The Profit Express. I am Tim Healy, and I'm inviting you to join me each and every week so together we can win the battle for business. And each and every Wednesday, we drop a brand new episode, so make sure you listen and download. And you can follow me and the show on Instagram at The Profit Express, on Twitter at Profit_Express, and The Profit Express page on Facebook as well. Now, today is for me, and I know for you, is going to be a special episode because I know so many of you who listen are small business owners. I know so many of you who listen are working for small businesses, and that's where you get your livelihood. Now, small businesses have been faced with a lot of economic challenges over the past few years for certain. Especially with COVID, we all know, unfortunately, too well some of the challenges that we've faced because of the pandemic. And also, small businesses for many years in small towns all around the country have been battling against the Amazons of the world and the big box stores of the world. But here's one thing that we all know. Small business is America. Small business is small towns. And you don't get a sense of feeling of community that you get from a small business. You're not going to get that from a big box store. Let's face it, the owner of the pizzeria, the owner of the hair salon is probably your neighbor. They may very well coach your son's Little League team. That's small business. That's who we are. That's who the listeners of the Profit Express are. And today's guest is a very special guest because she's literally not just talking about small business. She's actually created a revolution, and she has rolled up her sleeves and is in small towns all across America. And she is Amanda Brinkman. She's the Chief Brand and Content Officer of Deluxe Corporation, and she's also the creator, the producer, and the host of the Small Business Revolution series that you can see, if you haven't already seen it, on Hulu, that Inc. also describes as must-see TV for entrepreneurs. So it is a real pleasure to welcome aboard the Profit Express, Amanda Brinkman. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
No, listen, it's my pleasure. There's a lot to talk about. What I found very unique about your story and why I want you on, listen, I've had a lot of authors on the show and they've written great books, but as I said, you're face to face, belly to belly with so many of these small business owners who are succeeding, who are failing, who are facing different kinds of challenges. And then you've created this revolution, which we're going to talk about, which is now going into its sixth year, its sixth season. So congratulations on that, by the way. That's tremendous stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, we're extremely excited about our focus for this year.
Yeah, we're going to get to that specifically. It's a special season for you, obviously. But let's go back a little bit. And I heard the story that you told you did a TED Talk a few years back. And it was while you were working, correct me if I'm wrong, you were working at a huge national ad agency. And you and your colleagues were kind of debating what you should do with a $20 million ad budget. And then you had this epiphany about money and selling products and services and what we can really do with that, which to me kind of is where this all began. So I really want to start there. So what was that epiphany on that snowy day in Minnesota?
Well, thank you so much for having watched the TED Talk. And you're right. I mean, so for me in my career, I've always lived in this constant pursuit of like, how can we bring business and goodness together? I think in the world of business, we think so much of it as mutually exclusive. Like either you're doing good in the world or you're making money, and either you work for a nonprofit or you work for a big company. And I just feel like those things can live together in harmony and actually can be much more effective if we use our large platform. So that was the epiphany that I had as we were talking about this big budget. I was thinking about the power of those dollars and how much actual money that was, and how we weren't, we were just, one meeting in one conference room talking about one ad budget, but globally we spend so much talking to and at people about our products and services and selling them things. And if we just redirected a little portion of that to doing things that was good for our customers beyond the things that we do and sell, how powerful those dollars could be. And so I kind of spent my career in constant pursuit of how to bring those two things together. And I do believe that the small business revolution is a perfect culmination of that concept. It is good for the company that I work for, Deluxe, but on our way to it being, helping us do well as a company, it's doing good for the very community that we serve, which is small businesses.
So I know that concept of doing good, from a corporate perspective, it's been around. We've spoken about it, but I almost, my show's been around for 11 years, and I almost got the sense sometimes that some entrepreneurs were somewhat cynical of it. It was nice to talk about. We touched upon it, but as somebody who's really, jumped in the deep end of the pool on this one, like yourself, do you feel that, in 2021? We're really embracing it more genuinely in corporate America? Are you getting that sense?
Absolutely. I think, I always say, to have a brand purpose statement, unless you're actually doing something with it, is just a fancier marketing term for your mission statement. I think consumers and the public are demanding that you turn that brand purpose into actual brand action. What are you actually doing against that purpose? How are you making a difference? Again, beyond just, providing value to your shareholders and employing people, you need to be actually contributing to the world in some bigger way. And I think specifically coming out of 2020, consumers are demanding that even more. I think that the disproportionate amount of wealth in our country, the places in which dollars are spent, I think everyone just kind of recognized that during kind of the pandemic. And on the other side of it, I think brands are going to have to really show up and show how they're demonstrating that value beyond what they sell. And thinking of it as a shareholder value, how that is one of your commitments to your shareholders. It's not just making them money, but helping them feel like, where they're spending their money and the businesses that they're supporting are actually doing something good in the world as well.
Well, yeah, I think in so many ways, 2020 is forced us in corporate America to have a lot of different conversations. Doing good is certainly one of them, and we're going to continue to get into that today. So you had the epiphany, then we fast forward the story, and you end up getting a call from Deluxe Corporation, which is a 100-year-old. A couple of years ago, they celebrated 100 years. Many people may know them as the check printing company, right? They've since evolved beyond that. So they need help. They reach out to you. You saw an opportunity, which I think was very, very unique, specifically at Deluxe. What was the opportunity? How did that kind of come to be for you?
Well, we were a 100-year-old company. Well, we were about to celebrate our 100th year. And you're right, we were known for a legacy product, which was in decline. And
right.
We really wanted to show how we had evolved right alongside our customers and the fact that we were doing so many more things. We're really a technology company now, and we do incredible solutions in the fintech space for financial services organizations. We do things for enterprise clients. And we had this whole suite of services for small businesses. But no one knew us for that. So going into our 100th year, we had less than 1% brand awareness with small businesses, specifically that we did all of these other things.
Less than 1% after 100 years?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, and wow.
So I always like to say everywhere from there was up, trying to be positive. And we're a very conservative Minnesota-based company, 100 years. We don't spend a lot on brand awareness or branding. And, we're about to celebrate our centennial, and that's a big deal. That's a milestone for a company, but we really couldn't afford to use that time or that platform or that voice to just talk about ourselves. We really needed to use it as an opportunity to talk about our future and what we were going to be focused on as a company. And so the idea was, how do we reach more small businesses? And as as we've been talking about, I've been in this constant pursuit of how do you kind of do something good for your customers and prove that can actually do well for your company. So for us, for Deluxe, doing well would be defined from a business metric perspective as raising brand awareness with small businesses and making sure that they know the name Deluxe and associate it with small business. So how could we get that name out there, but at the same time do something good for small businesses? And for me, whenever I started a new company, I've been in a variety of industries: financial services, healthcare. This is small business, retail services. I love to spend time with the customers.
Right.
As a marketer, you and I have talked about this before. As a marketer, you can't reach people if you don't understand what it's like to be them. If you don't kind of spend that time, boots on the ground, that ethnographic research, that qualitative, those qualitative insights can't be replaced by data. When you see what it's actually like to be that company and how do they make purchase decisions. And as I was out meeting with small businesses, I was just so moved by their stories. When you hear why someone started a flower shop or a restaurant, or what it means to them to continue that second generation business, you want to support them. You want to spend your dollars with them. You're personifying the business. You're putting a face to a business and recognizing the power of your dollar. You said it in the intro, when you're supporting a small business, you're helping, keep those dollars local. They're supporting the local Little League. They're investing within the community. So for me, that's where the idea came from for the Small Business Revolution. What if could we create a movement? Could we use our platform to inspire more people to understand the importance of supporting small businesses, to recognize what an impact you could have? And could storytelling be the vehicle to doing that? Could we tell the stories of small businesses, all with the hopes to inspire them to support the small businesses within their neighborhoods and their communities? And so in the first year of the Small Business Revolution, what we did is during our 100th year, we went across the country and told the stories of 100 small businesses. And we filmed these as beautiful mini documentaries and really photojournalistic style to it. And it was all about that quality, and that cinema by which we were telling the stories was part of the message. We really wanted to show them as the heroes we believe that they are. And so that was, for us, and we did that throughout our 100th year, and we barely talked about Deluxe. We just talked about the small businesses. It was movement first, and it was the Small Business Revolution championed by Deluxe. And the word championed was a very, specific decision. It was that within that word, you hear advocacy, you hear, support, you hear walking alongside. And so that's how we wanted to be seen in this work. We wanted it to be movement first, championed by Deluxe, and we were able to create a movement, and now it's evolved into a television show, and the movement has continued. But I think it was because we really focused on the authenticity. How do we do something good for the small business community, and that will, in and of itself, lead to people, understanding who Deluxe is and the fact that we're with small businesses. But by staying kind of focused on that authenticity, that was how we got the brand to come along as well.
So you get brought on to help them out. They had 1% brand recognition after almost 100 years. So anything is up, as you said, right? But you also said in your description of the company, the Minnesota-based, they're a conservative company. They don't spend a lot on branding. Just, as a small business owner myself, as I'm hearing the stories, I've seen the episodes and the shows, 100-year celebration is big for any company. But did you or the people at Deluxe see this as a bit of I'm kind of looking at it as like a big gamble, because Deluxe is in the background. It's championed, as you just said, by Deluxe, but we're not talking about Deluxe. And just, again, touring the country and the production. I mean, as a marketing maven, what goes into this? I mean, we're talking serious resources. Was there any of that kind of like, we hope this works? This is a big gamble.
Absolutely. Great insight. Yeah. And that was what I was talking about way back at the beginning of that TED Talk that you and I just touched on. Like it's about like, how do you redirect some of those marketing dollars? So this wasn't an incremental investment in really rich content. This was taking highly measurable marketing dollars and redirecting it to really authentic, what people would describe as soft and fluffy brand work. And so that did take some convincing to figure out, that will be a bet. We are redirecting part of our marketing dollars, but investing in this content, and can that, because of the quality of it, reach people than we would have reached if we would have just spent that on direct paid advertising. And in that first year, we did prove that ROI. So it got, I wouldn't say easier, but at least I had proof points to continue the work. We reached 11 times more people than we would have reached if we would have spent that same amount of money we invested in creating the films in paid advertising. Because
really?
Yeah.
Oh,
and
wow.
it was because it was authentic and people were organically sharing it. And we had all this earned media. Like the first year, there were nearly 1,000 news stories written about the small business revolution. And I don't care how good you are at PR. We could have maybe gotten 2 stories written about the fact that we were turning 100.
A couple, yeah.
But it's not news as much anymore. But instead, this is like 998 more stories than we could have gotten because we were doing something that mattered. And what I love is that all 998 of those stories were about how important it is to support small businesses, why we were doing it. So yeah, it was great for Deluxe to have all those stories written, but it was also really, really good for the small business community as a whole. And so that's what I'm always talking about. Is like, it can be good for both. You can do something that matters to your customers. And when we talk about doing something good for your customers too, like, it's not always like solving like poverty or world hunger or water purification. Like, there are so many different veins of doing good and making a difference in someone's life, and making a small business more viable, more financially healthy, more successful. That is good, because as we've been talking about, it has a ripple effect throughout the entire community. When a small business is strong, it directly impacts a family. It starts to create generational wealth. It has all these great things that come with it. So yeah, I mean, it was an investment, and it definitely was a bet. But I just made a lot of passionate speeches to the board, and luckily I report directly to our CEO, and both the CEO at the time as well as our newer CEO, who's incredible, his name's Barry, both really saw the vision in this and saw the fact that we could do what all of our competitors were doing, which is just talking at small businesses, or we could stand all the way over here and walk alongside them in a way that nobody else was doing at the time. And it was just a lot of passionate speeches about, like, just trust me, like, quality content will reach more people. It just will. And it did. And so then we started to have proof as we went along.
Well, the first year's proof, like you're saying, like 1,000 press pieces that, through coverage. I mean, that's an incredible number. Incredible. Like you said, the world's greatest PR agency couldn't have done that for you. So this is interesting. So you come from the big corporate marketing ad agency, national agency, where you've got these gigantic budgets, $20 million, and they're looking at TV, print, all that. Now you dive in, you're knee deep into the typical small business. And and I know that, and it's the people who are listening to the Profit Express. People get into small business because they have a passion for flowers. People get into small business like that couple. Is it Annabelle's? The Italian restaurant was one of them.
Yeah.
Their store, right?
Bob and Allison.
Right. You see, you connect with them. So they had the passion for the food, the cooking, the restaurant. But we know that a lot of small business owners were not always the greatest business professionals. Whether it's marketing, whether it's finance, so on and so forth. So here's a question for you. So you go from that world of having a $20 million budget to a typical business on Main Street. How much different is that, and the mindset, and how do you get them thinking about their business in a way that they probably haven't thought of?
Well, you're 100% right. Most entrepreneurs didn't start their business because they couldn't wait to build a website or design a logo or figure out what the heck SEO is. But that is what you find yourself with on the other side of starting a business. And so that's what I love about marketing, is that it scales, and the world of marketing and branding. And so, when we're talking to small businesses, no, they're not going to have those huge budgets to advertise, but some of those same core principles, those best practices that big brands do, are available to small businesses. That's why Deluxe started to get into these services, these marketing services, because we saw that the internet leveled the playing field for businesses of all sizes. But just because marketing was accessible to businesses of all sizes, it then became expected of businesses of all sizes. So you expect to be able to, go onto your favorite search engine and search for restaurants near me, and you expect that local restaurants will show up just like big restaurants will, or chains. And so all of those principles are now available to small businesses. But to our point, they didn't start their business to necessarily get into that. They don't have a large marketing department like big companies do to focus on that. So that's why we at Deluxe built out those services, is so that small businesses could compete and show up big on. And so the things that we advise businesses on in the show and in real are some of those same best practices big brands do, and it's still available. And the number one thing that small businesses can do is make sure that they are findable online. Search is the name of the game now. Making sure you have a sophisticated brand, a beautiful brand, meaning your logo, the colors, the typography, the words you use on your website and in your marketing materials can make you show up like you're a 20-year-old established big business if you want. You know, that branding is not a huge investment, but it reaps rewards for you because it shows you show up as very professional. So the brand is so important, and you can invest in that as a big business or a small business, but that's just kind of a best practice. Making sure you're findable online, and I could go into more detail, but
sure,
making sure that you're paying attention to your website and the words you're using on your website and how it's built, that you're cleaning your directories and your listings, that you're consistent on your social media. Those are things that big businesses do, but small businesses can do them too. And to be able to compete in that search war is core and key. And you don't have to have a huge budget to do some of those things. So anyway, that's what we're always helping small businesses with, is how do you take some of those best practices that big companies do and apply them to your business? And then if you have more dollars to advertise, great. That's driving people to what you're doing. But those basic kind of principles are available to small businesses as well.
Now, again, the internet and social media has certainly been a great equalizer. Okay. And if you do a good job there, you can, as you just said, appear much bigger than you really are. Perception's reality. Have you found, I think I found this just locally in people that I network with and do business with, being a small business owner myself, that even though, like you said, hey, there's best practices that corporate uses and you can adjust it for yourself, your scale, your dollars, okay? Do you think, because, I mean, you've had such a rich experience talking to so many small business owners these past 6 years, do you think that they just don't believe they can do it because they're so tiny compared to Target?
I think it's one part that they don't feel like, they feel like marketing is just for big brands, or it's too much of an investment. But I always say you can't, a lot of small businesses feel like they can't afford marketing. I always say you can't afford not to invest in your brand and some level of marketing, because that is what will contribute to your growth and it's what helps you compete. So it should be a priority from a fiscal and time management resource perspective. But I think the other part too is that they just don't know what to do. I mean, they just, at big companies, you have areas of expertise. You have subject matter experts. You have entire departments dedicated to HR policies. You have entire departments thinking about the numbers and the finance and the accounting. You have entire departments that are marketing experts and went to school for that. And small business owners are trying to wear all the hats. And there's no way that anyone is good at all of those things. It's just...
Right.
There might be someone out there, but it's not...
It's impossible. Right.
You can't have the skill set in all of them, or the interest. And so I always advise small businesses and entrepreneurs, like, first of all, you started your business because you had a great idea and you loved something. You had a passion for something. Well, you should continue to have that privilege in running your business. So make sure you're spending your time on the parts that you enjoy about your business, but also where you can contribute to the growth of your business most. So some people they should be the ones that are out there trying to get those big contracts because their skill is selling, or some of them it is actually in product manufacturing. Like, make sure you're honest with yourself about where your time is going to be best spent.
Good point. Yep.
Advance your business. Like, your time is as valuable as a resource as your finances. So you could figure out your social media. You could absolutely spend the time and figure it out. But is that 3 hours that you're spending trying to figure it out? There's an opportunity cost to that time. Could you be spending on something else that would more directly contribute, and then hire that piece of it out, or find someone else who's more skilled to do it? So I think it's kind of those three pieces. I think a lot of businesses don't think that that's for them because they're too small, or two, they don't think that they can afford it, which is a fallacy. The things we're talking about, it can be done very, very affordably. And then the third is that they just feel like, or they just don't know what to do. They're not sure what to do, so they kind of ignore it or put it to the side, and that can be a mistake as well.
Well, I listen. I think that even just the one thing you said was extremely valuable advice. Know what you're best at. And that's where your time should be spent, because we can't. I know myself. I'm new to the world of Instagram, by the way, and I've been doing social for a while, but this is like a whole new world for me. So I can certainly feel that pain. Let me take a bit of a turn here for a sec. So the revolution started in 2015, the 100 stories around the country, and it evolved into the TV series on Hulu. Season 6 is coming up in the fall of this year. So I assume you guys are in production or whatever it is. I don't know TV. But what I would be interesting to get your perspective on, because what you have is extremely unique. So you had been talking to X number of companies in 2015, 2016, leading up to 2020. So you have obviously a real intimate knowledge and awareness of small business. 2020 comes. Now, I think it was Fredonia, was that New York, right? Mm-hmm. That was last year's episode. And it was funny. We're here on Long Island in New York, right? And I think the season kicked off in March of last year, at least according to the video that I'd seen. Yeah. And we all know what happened in March of 2020. So two kind of questions. First, how do you do the show like that during COVID? Number one, I'd be interested to know. But then also, what have you seen with small business owners, more importantly, in this past year? Have the conversations changed? Have the challenges changed?
Absolutely. I have so much to say. Okay, so for context for your audience, what the show now, I should probably maybe just explain that. So
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we went from telling these 100 stories, and we loved the storytelling. We loved the fact that the movement was starting. But one of the we noticed two things when we were going across the country doing this. One, we noticed that while we loved celebrating these businesses, giving them the attention, creating this movement, we also noticed that there were some they weren't thinking of. We've helped with, like, we noticed that maybe their website could have been more findable online, or that maybe their branding could work harder for them, and so we wanted to help. And then the second thing we noticed is that nowhere were small businesses struggling more than in our small towns. It's really hard to compete as a small business and an entrepreneur just from online competition, no matter where you are. But then in these smaller communities, you're having major highways being rerouted around the historic downtown. You are having, big box stores starting on the edge of town, pushing out mom and pop shops. It's just really hard to compete. And so we said, let's take the storytelling a step further. Let's actually go in and help these communities and help these businesses. Let's still focus on the storytelling of the business and why they're so important to their community, but then let's also help them, and let's film that help so that other small businesses can watch the episodes and learn from it. So it turned into basically a small business makeover show. But we always say a makeover show with heart. Like, we're there to help. Most reality shows are there to make people look silly or faux drama. We're just there to just walk alongside these folks, right, and help them with the things we know how to do. And so essentially for the first 5 seasons of the show, each season we would ask people to nominate their favorite small town, and then Deluxe would invest $500,000 in revitalizing the winning town's main street. And we would work with 6 key small businesses within the community. Each episode would be about an individual business. We'd tell the story, we'd help them with their marketing, their finances, their operations. We'd do a before and after physical improvement. And so that's basically the premise of the show. And so I share all of that as context,
sure,
just to kind of set the stage. And so after all the voting and everything, we're really, the whole thesis of the show is to show just how vital small businesses are to our communities. We're staking the claim that if you invest in your small businesses, that an entire community can thrive as a result. And so what we've seen and what we've learned along the way is a whole host of things, a whole variety of things. That, first of all, that our instincts were right, that most small businesses, the things that they struggle with the most are marketing and finances. So not necessarily understand how to market their business or how to use marketing to their advantage, and then not necessarily knowing the numbers or what the numbers are telling them. And so that's the kind of stuff that we help with on the show. And then for season 6, we're going to be bringing it back home to Minneapolis and St. Paul, which is where we're based. And we're going to be focusing on all Black-owned businesses in 6 different neighborhoods that are vital to our community here locally. And we're really excited to just to bring it back home. Minneapolis was very much ground zero for the social reckoning we see the world going through around racial injustice. Sure. And we feel like by celebrating these businesses, by lifting them up and just doing what we do, investing in small businesses and entrepreneurs, that we can show yet again that ripple effect that it can have within communities.
So then it's so amazing what's happened, because of the pandemic. And, if you look at one industry that's been decimated, it's, the restaurant, the independent small restaurants, mm-hmm. not the chains necessarily, the independent small ones. And if you think about it, for the typical American, just, when you think small business, restaurant is always so key in any community. Not dismissing the others, of course, but that's like the sense of eating and family and coming mm-hmm. together, And I'm just saying that because I just feel so bad for so many of these restaurants. And here in New York, Manhattan, some famous restaurants closed, never come back. So the 2 keys that you had witnessed was businesses have a challenge with marketing and with finances. And the show really evolved into being a not just a documentary, but it's also a how-to. So if you're watching, that's why Inc. magazine says, you guys are must-watch kind of TV, right? For the small business owner, because of everything that you guys, are sharing. You've had some tremendous co-hosts. It was Robert, I'm going to mispronounce the last name, Herjavec, is that it, from Shark Tank?
Yeah.
Did I get it right? Okay, good. Good. You had him on, you had Ty Pennington for a while, with all these different, backgrounds and wisdom and knowledge set. Season 6, very interesting entrepreneur. Tell us about him.
Yeah, so my co-host for season 6 is Baron Davis. So he's a former NBA All-Star turned entrepreneur. So what we love about that is that he just, he loves entrepreneurs. He's already doing this work to try and build up entrepreneurs and invest in them and offer things he's learned in starting his businesses. So we're really excited for that. Every year we try to do something a little bit different creatively. So Robert was an amazing co-host. People probably know him from Shark Tank. He was great. And then it was fun to bring in Ty Pennington. So every year we're trying to kind of change things up from a talent and just how we put the show together to keep it interesting. So we just think Baron's just going to bring a wealth of expertise this year, and
right.
We're excited, obviously, about the focus and excited to be on board. But I just realized I never answered your question though about what we saw in 2020 when we were working with the businesses. Do you want me to go back to that?
I would love to if you could finish talking about Baron, because I know he's obviously. We're going to go back to that question, but what I'm getting a sense of, Amanda, you've got these big successful entrepreneurs, NBA All-Stars, they're fighting and clamoring to be your co-host. That's what I'm getting the sense here.
It's a good place to be in. And in the very beginning, we saw, incredible talent kind of flock to this work because, any brand can pay an influencer or a celebrity to do something for them. But what we saw with people coming out of the woodwork wanting to be a part of it because they saw the authenticity. That was why it was so valuable that we didn't make it an infomercial, that we didn't make it feel like you were watching something from a brand, but that it happened to be a brand as a publisher, but that the work mattered, the message mattered. We always say every episode is it's certainly one part education. We love getting notes from small businesses that are like, I couldn't write notes fast enough as I was watching, but it's one part affirmation. It's so lonely to be an entrepreneur. It's so many times you feel like you're the only one struggling with some of those things, but to see yourself in these stories is very affirming. And then there's some sense of relief, like, I'm not the only one who didn't know that about my numbers, or I'm not the only one who didn't know what to do about that.
Right.
It's one part, we hope education or entertaining. It's fun. It's a fun show, so you don't feel like you're watching something educational. It's fun reality TV. And then it's one part inspiration. It's also intended for supporters of small businesses. And again, that's why the storytelling is so vital, to hear these small business owners' stories and to recognize, again, the importance of supporting small businesses. So anyway, people want to be a part of that just because it is entertainment and it is published by a brand, but it's, the quality is enough to have been picked up by Hulu, and it's on Prime Video now as well. And I think that speaks volumes to just the fact that it's, again, mission and movement first, and then the brand gets to come along for the ride when you do that balance right.
Well, listen, like you said, you could write a big check to an influencer and they'll be there and they have an appearance, but somebody who wants to be a part of it because of what you're doing, that's genuine. You can't fake that. And they want to bring their expertise, their passion, to the series. So, all right, so let's get back to that. The interesting point, because you have a very unique perspective, having spoken to so many entrepreneurs pre-COVID, then COVID hits, the whole world gets turned upside down, personally, financially, emotionally, physically, for everybody. What were some of the different conversations or different concerns or different challenges that you might have noticed this past season compared to previous ones?
So you're right. We started filming right before kind of COVID shut everything down. So we had started the filming process. We had selected the businesses. We had shot the first few scenes. So we had some of the season in the can. And then COVID hit and it just changed everything. And we filmed most of the show right here from my basement. It really changed things from a production perspective, but it made the need so much more immediate. I mean, small businesses were disproportionately hit by this. This is a very different kind of economic crisis that we were seeing.
Right.
And so we needed to do the things we do for the businesses to help them, but faster and differently. So you're right. Restaurants have been really, really hard hit. We were asking restaurants to change their business model like overnight to respond to, if it used to be that you wanted to create this really great intimate dine-in experience, and suddenly we were asking everybody to be a to-go delivery service, and that's a different business model, operationally, financially, everything, staffing.
Yeah.
So what's funny is that we went back to some of the same marketing principles we always advise. Like, this is the time you need to believe us that being findable online is so vital. Like, for the entire year of 2020 and right now and for the foreseeable future, your website and your digital footprint is your storefront. That is how people are finding you. And so making sure that your website is findable and you're thinking about things like keywords and you're telling your story accurately on your website and being consistent about your hours and updating folks on your safety that is so vital. Making sure that you've claimed your directories and that's consistent information as well, your social media. So the number one thing we were advising businesses on during 2020, and it's one of the principles we said before and we'll keep saying, but it just couldn't have been more important, is that the need to communicate with your customers and make sure you are findable online is vital to your success. And by the things that people needed to be communicating at the time was, how do I still support you? People wanted to support small businesses, but as we were kind of making it hard for our customers. Every county's rules were different. Every industry's standards were different. Could restaurants be open or not was different by state. Everything was different, but we were putting that all on consumers to try and figure out. And so it's like, just make it as easy as possible for people to buy from you. Are you open or not? How do they order? What are your new hours? Like, just be really, really clear about how they can continue to support you. Both push that information and make sure that when they find you, it's there. And so just staying in front of your customers and communicating with them was vital during that time. And so I think a lot of businesses just started to believe us more, like, yeah, I know, I got to be findable online. And then all of a sudden they saw, like, oh, this is why you have always been saying this, because that is just so vital. And I could go into more detail about how search engines triangulate data online and what I'm talking about, but just that's my big takeaway, is that digital footprint is vital. And the second thing that we saw was just how few small businesses had any sort of cash reserves. And I think people personally were affected by that as well. You always hear the adage, you should have 6 months of your salary saved up. And people say, yeah, I'll do that. Businesses need to have that same kind of safety net. And I think businesses moving forward will be mindful of that. Something like this could happen again. And we have a little bit of a blueprint now. So thinking through that piece of it. But I could just talk about restaurants, for the rest of our time. Like, restaurants always operate on really, really narrow margins and don't have a lot of cash reserves. And so that's why we saw restaurants just get hit so immediately, is because you don't have a lot of runway in that business model typically.
Yeah, I mean, the profit margins are historically, single digits and not great in that industry. It's a tough industry. But like you said, it's not just, okay, let's clean up SEO, let's clean up the website, the directories, etc. But when you tell a small business, you have to change your model as to how you do things, because fine dining doesn't necessarily translate well into curbside pickup, and that's a hard thing to wrap your head around, especially if you are the one who's passionate about the food, and now I'm going to put my food in aluminum tins and put it in a bag. But that's a key consideration, again, especially for restaurants and hospitality in general. But what I do want to talk about, because I think, there's been a ton written about it, a ton of books. It's a hot new topic, and I hate to hear, that as much as the next person, but the power of storytelling and stories. Now, again, if you go back to small businesses, the very people who are listening to the Profit Express, so many of them don't think, and I know this firsthand, I know you've experienced it yourself, they don't think, because they might not work in a sexy industry. Okay, they, accounting's not, who wants to hear my story, right? But I want to hear from you. I want those listening to hear it from you. A, do you believe every small business has a story? And then B, how many of them are really using it to their advantage to connect and to market?
Oh, you are just asking the best questions. Okay, so true to point.
Well, you're inspiring the revolution. Not every day I have a revolution on the show. This is inspiring.
Okay, so yes, absolutely. Every small business has a story, and that is one of your differentiators. Like, that is one of the things you should be talking about, because again, people want to support people. They want to feel like when they're spending their dollars that there is impact to that. And so you're right, whether or not you're in the accounting field or restaurant or retail, your story really matters.
Right.
I mean, storytelling is as old as time. It's how we have always passed on information,
right,
lessons, values. It's how we create empathy as human beings and perspective shifts. It's how you change hearts and minds. And so, yeah, you want to share your story. You want to share why you started it. And so both my dad and my sister are CPAs, and I find them very interesting people. They're very funny. They're wonderful. And they, feel a lot of, passion for what they do and the story behind it. So my sister is a public accountant, and she works in the nonprofit sector. So through her skill set, she is then helping all these nonprofits, be successful in all the things they need to do from a financial and accounting perspective and a compliance perspective. There's impact to that. That's part of the story. It's, you need all the parts of the, I think, it's all the parts of the body need to work together.
Right.
It's a biblical reference to that. But I just think it's about making sure you're sharing your story. Every business has a story to why they started. It doesn't matter what your industry is, and you need to be sharing that. That's one of your differentiators. And it allows people to expect that you're going to have a more personalized experience, that you care about it for more reasons than just making money or employment, that you started it from a place of passion. And so, yeah, it could not be more important to share your story.
Well, I think pre-COVID, there was the sense of small businesses in small towns compete against Goliath, compete against Amazon and big box. And I think they were all trying to, rally the local communities. I think one of the benefits, unfortunately, from a pandemic, but one of the benefits has been that I think, let me know what you think, that communities, small towns, I'll use your word, have more empathy today for those, the pizzeria, the florist, the hair cutter, than they might have. Not that they didn't care about them, but I think we're all seeing a lot of life differently right now. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely. So there, and I'm saying this, I guess, from a perspective to, and I'd love to have you kind of give me your thought on it. Small businesses need to take advantage of that. Not to sound opportunistic, but, this is a shift. And that's why, identifying the story and sharing the story as a way to connect with, people when empathy is at a high. I mean, I just don't get a sense that people are doing enough of that.
Well said. I think you're right. It's not about necessarily even thinking of it as opportunistic. This is what we think you should have been doing before. You should you should leverage the fact that you are actively involved in the community. You should leverage the fact that the tax dollars you spend stay here in this community. You should talk about those things. That is part of your sale, is not just your business. It is the very nature of like the impact of supporting small businesses. Like everyone can carry that flag alongside their own personal story of their business. So do that for sure. And yeah, I think people want to support small businesses. So we need to make it as easy as possible for them to do it in terms of communicating, but then also just making sure that we're sharing that story. We're sharing just how vital they are to the community. We actually did a pivot right when COVID first hit. We were filming the series from our basements, and we were figuring out how to like continue to do season 5 differently from afar. And the season turned out great, and it's almost a journal entry into what small business went through last year. We're really proud of how it turned out. But in the meantime, what we were seeing was that small businesses were responding to their communities in like unbelievable ways. You know, restaurants were like opening up like food drives, and we were seeing, small furniture manufacturers recognizing that they had the right kind of material to make masks. Remember when like PPE stuff was like find right away?
Yes.
So they were making like masks for frontline workers, and like we saw distilleries, moving away from producing alcohol and using their equipment to produce hand sanitizer. Like, I mean, like that's where big business can learn from small business. Is like, think about that pivot. That was like overnight, and they did it because it was the right thing to do. Like they just went and did it.
Right.
So we started this ancillary series called Small Business Big Heart, and we did 18 episodes of it, and we stood the whole thing up in a week. And just like this, we interviewed folks virtually, and then we drove viewers to whatever, and listeners to whatever kind of cause that they were at. So we opened up like a GoFundMe to support their work. But we just told the stories and let the businesses tell the stories of what they were doing for their communities to re-emphasize, like, look, you guys, like, it's your small businesses right now that are like figuring out how to like help immediately. Like this is amazing. And so I do think people recognize that small, like one of the women who runs Crema Bakery in Austin, Texas, she said, we didn't realize it, but all these years we had been planting all these little seeds within our community just by doing the right thing and showing up the way we wanted to in our community. And they were starting to see all of that come back. Like they were starting to see everybody, like they were reaping the rewards and seeing the beautiful foliage growing from those seeds that they had planted all those years ago. So anyway, that was a long way of saying you're right. No. I think people really want to support small businesses now. So now is strike while the iron's hot.
Well, think about it. Yeah, again, there's a sense of urgency now that the small business owner has to take advantage of. But think about this, when a small business closes, it's very hard to open up again because you need inventory dollars, you need insurance. If your people are gone, can you hire them back? And when you lose too much business in your local small town, again, there goes the feeling, the flair, the culture, on a local level. That's why I think we've also learned as human beings because of COVID, and I think a lot of us can't wait for the days where it's easier and more accessible, and more free, just to go back to those stores that we might have taken for granted. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you an unfair question, but you got to answer it.
I'm game.
So you've had a wealth of great stories that you've been a part of and that you've helped. Which one's your favorite? Come on. You can't, they're all favorite, Tim. I love them all. Come on. There has to be one that speaks to Amanda. Which is that one that speaks to you and why?
Oh, my gosh. It is so hard to pick. I mean, we have 30 incredible businesses we've worked with intimately over the course of the 5 seasons. I think last year during COVID, one of the businesses that we were really, really moved by, it's this gentleman named Mike. He goes by Mike, which was his former hip hop name, or rapping. And he was running an auto detailing shop on the side. And he almost didn't, and then working at a metal manufacturing plant during the day. And he was just working his butt off, doing both things. And we see this from so many entrepreneurs. They have these things, we call it side hustle. Side
hustle, yes, yeah.
And his dream was just to be able to like leave that job and focus on his business. And he almost didn't apply to be on the show because he just believed, in his words, he said, money always goes to money. And he almost didn't apply to be on. And he is one of the most impactful stories we've told over the course of the last 5 seasons. And I think so many people saw inspiration through his story and what it takes to actually make that leap from a full-time, and what happens when you invest in entrepreneurs. And I think, he is a proud Black man. He felt like he didn't have access to the same capital or resources that other entrepreneurs within his community did.
Right.
And he is just such an inspiration around how he just kept at it. And I think we can help people understand. Everyone's trying to figure out kind of what is the right way forward around battling racial injustice. And there are so many things we need to do as a society.
Sure.
What ranges. But one of the ways forward is around economic empowerment and building up entrepreneurs, creating generational wealth, creating opportunities, and showing and highlighting and celebrating Black excellence. And so I think what was really inspiring about Mike's story is that it allowed us to do that. It allowed us to show through Mike's story where there are systemic barriers, but show what an impact a really strong small business and investing in a business can then have. By the end of the episode, you see what an impact it's already making on his family. I won't give anything away, but what on his family, what an impact it's making on the community. And so I think investing in entrepreneurs, specifically entrepreneurs of color right now, is just it's one of the ways to really address racial injustice and do our part. So there's many other things we need to do as a society, but that is something that for us we know how to do. We know how to strong entrepreneurs.
Well, and listen, that's what's going to make season 6 so special. I can't wait to see it. This is, I mean, we could have done the whole show on just restaurants, for example. Super amazing, creative idea that you had when you first got on board with Deluxe. Having the courage and the conviction to have an idea like this with a 100-year-old conservative company, kudos to you. It was just a great, amazing idea. And it just highlighted the importance of connecting with customers and storytelling, and not just trying to, push product and service. It's, listen, thanks so much for being on board. I love what you guys are doing. Good luck on season 6.
Thank you so much for your support. You've been awesome all along the way. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And again, that was Amanda Brinkman. That is Amanda Brinkman. Make sure you follow her and the Small Business Revolution for season 6 is coming up in the fall of 2021. Amanda, thank you so much for being on board today.
Thank you.
And this has been the Profit Express. Remember, each and every Wednesday, new episodes drop. So make sure you listen and download and follow me and the show on Instagram at The Profit Express, on Twitter at Profit_Express, as well as the Profit Express Facebook page. Each and every Wednesday, thanks so much for sharing your time and for being on board the Profit Express.